Can she hear us?
I haven't figured that out yet.
She's
I don't
not.
think so. She doesn't seem to be reacting like she hears us.
Okay, you may begin.
She probably needs to call in on one of the phone numbers then.
Yeah. I don't have a cell number for her to contact her. Steve Lesterjet.
You're on mute. Steve.
Yeah, I was just saying that came on too quick. I didn't even get to put my phone down.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Y'all are all live. You're live on the air.
Do you have a phone number for her?
I do not.
I'm gonna look through my files real quick.
I could email her real quick.
The board members are saved where, Jackie, in the P&Z? I'm in the share folder.
Go to the P&Z cases, the
In cases?
commission. No, right there on the bottom.
Todd, while we're waiting, did my envelope get there for Grant?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Thank you. That's very nice of you. So
Well, no, I mean, anything. I just want to make sure he got it.
yeah, that's very nice.
So
Thank
y'all
you.
try taking it from me.
We're going to go, I think, see him this weekend. We have to, since school's starting back up, we have to take Ty to get school clothes. so
Right.
we got to go shopping this weekend to get him ready to go back to school. So, but anyway, so we're going to see Grant.
So Cecile's on my phone on speakerphone, so we'll be able to see her, and then the audio's through my phone, okay?
Okay.
All right.
You can hear us, correct?
Can you hear us, Cecile?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. Okay. Well, let's call the meeting to order. You have first level of, I guess, the declarations of conflict of interest. Do we just need to state that, or is there, I thought we had to sign documents on that, Smith. Is that not correct?
We can have Jackie do a roll call for you all, and then for the declaration, if y'all will just state that you don't have any conflict of interest with the agenda items.
Okay. We can do it. Let's go ahead and do that, Jackie, if you don't mind.
Chairman Overview.
I
here.
do not. I have no conflicts that I know of.
Nathan Thomas.
I believe he's
Nathan.
absent.
You'll have to speak up, Jackie.
Boardman Kingnan.
Cecile, that's you. Just say present.
Yeah, I'm here.
Boardman Russ.
He's
Absent.
absent.
Boardman Minks.
Absent.
And Boardman Books.
Me, and I have no conflict.
Okay.
Okay, you do have a quorum, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Would the village certify that we're in compliance with open meetings requirements?
We're in compliance with the resolution 2020-01.
All right, thank you. Can I have approval of the agenda from the motion to approve the agenda from the other members?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Becky.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Cecile. Appreciate that. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Seeing none, then the agenda will stand approved. You have in your packet the minutes from October 22nd. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I can make a motion
a
to
motion.
approve the minutes.
Go ahead, Becky.
I make a
Yeah.
motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposition? Seeing none, then the minutes will be approved. We will now go into public comment. Is there anybody online who would like to make a comment to the committee? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the next item, which is housing objectives, which is what we're really here for. So USDA housing information. Samantha, are you going to present that?
Yes, I did a little research after y'all's direction to come back with programs from the USDA that would be applicable to our village. And I was able to find the multifamily housing program. Provide affordable multifamily rental housing in rural areas by financing projects geared for low-income, elderly, disabled, and families, as well as domestic farm laborers. So they extend their reach by guaranteeing loans for affordable rental housing designed for low to moderate income residents. So they do have a portfolio of more than 14,000 properties for restructuring loans for existing rural and rental housing. And I think this is definitely a good fit for us to continue to dive into and look at our options as we try to achieve our goal of providing more housing in the community. They also have another program called the Housing Preservation and Revitalization. So some of our older homes that are dilapidated, maybe we can present these grants to those property owners to see if they can receive a grant to fix up their properties. But that doesn't really help us add inventory to our shortage. But the multifamily housing, I do think, is a good opportunity. One of the problems we have is with our zoning map not affording multifamily housing. But we definitely can look in that direction for that program. One thing I can present there's 2 new subdivisions in the works, one with 60 single-family homes and one with 17. And just present this to the developer and see if maybe they're interested in going this route to offer some of the homes at a more affordable price. So that was my research with USDA. Do you all have any questions?
Would there be maybe we can put together either some type of some way to get the message out to property owners or individuals that might be interested in that about the availability of those funds? But as you mentioned, I think it's a great avenue for individuals that have that. It's not going to, again, increase our need for units, but it might bring some units back online or that don't currently have or have access to, or even improve the situation around them. I don't know what would be the best venue to promote that. Do you have any ideas on that?
Well, you know that when we had the open house, and I know we can't do an open house like we did, did we call that an open house, you guys, where we had everybody, we were looking at people maybe who could purchase. That would be a good option. That kind of a grant would be a good option for someone who's going for a home that's, if there are any left on the market that are semi-affordable but need work, that might be a really good option for some of those people and would help them establish a little bit more roots in our community.
Absolutely. We would not be able to have a housing fair at this time, but maybe something, I don't know if you all were able to tune into the town hall meeting we had Monday night, maybe something like that, informative, invite our property owners out and and just see, provide them this information on how they can improve their properties. And we could do another one tailored towards developers and invite them on and ask them and kind of present our stance here in the community with our housing shortage due to our rental market. But that kind of segues into our next item, Todd, with the MRA and the purpose of this to help us achieve more housing in the community as well.
Okay, great. Great. What do you want to move to that next?
Yes. So with me today, I have Phyllis Taylor and Danielle Wilson with Site Southwest, and they have a presentation that they'd like to show us our draft plan. So any comments that you all have, we can incorporate in still, and we plan to bring this to council in March for adoption.
Okay. Great. Phyllis, you're on mute right now.
Of course I am.
There you go.
Nice to see you all and some familiar faces here. So can I share my screen? Do you know?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to share my screen and share the presentation. And you guys are a little bit of a guinea pig because we're going to be making this same presentation to PNC and then to council, and hopefully you can help us improve it. But no pressure. So I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about Metropolitan Redevelopment Area Plan that we're doing for the Southern Corridor. I'm going to go over the project, kind of the existing conditions we found that made the area eligible for that designation, and then talk to you about some of the projects that have come up. And then you might have some ideas, because some of these projects have to do with housing and making it more possible to do housing along the corridor. The State Metropolitan Redevelopment Act allows local governments to help business and property owners directly. So it's a way to get around the anti-donation clause for projects that have a public benefit. And the purpose of what we've been doing, looking at the corridor, documenting its conditions, have been to show that there's a demonstrated need and that it justifies the village's participation in making the area better, where normally you wouldn't see village participation in a public-private partnership. There are other ways that you can do that. You're familiar with the Affordable Housing Plan and the Affordable Housing Act, an ordinance that you have. That's another way that the village has been able to contribute to projects that have a public purpose. And then the Local Economic Development Act under the state is another one for kind of businesses that create base jobs. But this one is to look specifically at the Southern Corridor. And we've got a designation report that kind of documents all the conditions we found. And then we have an MRA plan that's in draft form that's identified projects that we think can make a difference along the corridor. And the boundary and the projects were identified through meetings with stakeholders. So we had a steering committee of property owners and business owners and Midtown representatives, village staff. And then we had a general meeting to which all property owners were invited. And those happened from June through December. And of course, COVID threw a little bit of a wrinkle into our process, but we've kind of kept it moving forward. And we did have a site visit where we came in June and met with some people directly and also kind of photographed the conditions that mattered for our purposes. So the things that we'd like to have happen is help property owners improve existing buildings and infrastructure. It opens up the possibility for grants and low interest loans for businesses and property owners. There's an idea about a business incubator that makes space available to new businesses at kind of favorable rates to help them get started. There's a goal that through keeping the businesses and making the area thrive, you can expand the local tax base and offer more to people who live in Ruidoso so you can keep people's dollars in local. We're looking at economic development in Midtown, making opportunities to rehab some of the buildings that aren't in great shape or make use of the ones that are empty, kind of help. It's a great, vibrant area that you have along Sudworth, but there's some properties that could use some work, and their beneficial or their use could help enliven the whole area. And then really the point of the Redevelopment Act at the state level is to focus on implementation. So that's a lot of what we're going to be talking about in the plan, and then making it possible for the village to help along this corridor, just like they can with affordable housing. We talked about relief from the anti-donation clause. There's also possibilities to look at some tax districts that would allow a portion of the property taxes generated in the district to help pay for improvements. The village can help with financing through Metropolitan redevelopment bonds if it wants to do something like that. And then there are some grant applications for improvements that would benefit from the designation of this area as a redevelopment area. The kinds of things that cities can do is they can acquire, own, lease, improve, or sell properties to make the area function better, carry out projects. Some cities have done facade improvement loans and grants to improve the look of an area. They can do public improvements. We've got some of those proposed. They can build new buildings and lease them or sell them. Provide parking, provide wayfinding signage, establish public-private partnerships with somebody, a developer who's trying to make something happen and just needs a little help to make his project feasible. And then actually help with issuing bonds or setting up a tax increment district of some sort to help finance public improvements. Just some examples of what other cities have done. We worked with downtown Las Cruces. You may be familiar with their downtown. They totally redid their Main Street, opened up the main, and have helped get some affordable housing in their downtown. The Hotel Clovis Lofts project in Clovis was an existing railroad hotel, and the city, plus some federal grants, kind of got that property and made it, took care of some environmental issues and made it a attractive project for a private developer who's got housing, some retail and office in that building now. Farmington and Carlsbad have done facade improvements, so have other communities. There's a river park in Las Vegas that was funded as a redevelopment project. And then the Main Street program that Midtown is affiliated with has had a theater program, and the Silver City Theater District, where Main Street could help renovate some old theaters and provide updated equipment for them, is another example. So there's a lot of different examples, but several of the ones you see here do include housing. Unfortunately, you don't have a big railroad hotel, but you do have some properties along the corridor that might make, good multifamily housing projects. This is the area that we're talking about. So can you see my little pointer here? Is that okay? So it goes from just west of Sudworth, all along west of Meacham, all along the Sudworth corridor, all the way to the US 70 intersection. And there's kind of a large area here at the east end that's got some vacant property in it, some buildings that are not in great shape and aren't being used right now. It's got the Horton complex that the village owns. There's, the Midtown area, which is outlined in red here. So it's really picking up the Midtown area and all the gateways that enter into it from the east and west. When we looked at the area to designate it as an MRA, there are certain criteria in the state Metropolitan Redevelopment Act that need to be, you have to look at the area to see what it is that makes it a good area for redevelopment designation. So there's a long list of things you can look at. The ones that we found to be true in this area are the ones in red. So deteriorated or deteriorating structures, deterioration of site or other kinds of improvements, diversity of ownership, which is pretty typical in the areas like downtowns, where MRAs tend to be in New Mexico. And there were a number of businesses that had closed, and some of them were empty. So those are the things that we looked at as being the criteria that this particular project meets.
Phyllis, I'm sorry, is this, when the area that you've outlined, how did you, it's obviously not a stagnant parameter around. So how did you, is it these criteria here that you're talking about that help dictate that, or was there some other decision that came in to identify that area?
Well, the idea to begin with was that there were some issues, the ones highlighted in red along this corridor. And I'll show you in a minute because we identified where the problems are. So you can see they're not everywhere, but they're all up and down. So they're not concentrated either. So, so I'll show you how we looked at that. And just so you know, in addition to presenting this to you and the Planning Commission and all the property owners, our designation report and the plan are currently being reviewed by the state, New Mexico Main Street, by the Historic Preservation Division, and by the Department of Transportation, because Sudderth is a state highway and some of the improvements that we're talking about are within their right of way. So there are other people looking at this too to make sure that at the state level, to make sure that it meets, their criteria, and they will give us comments on the draft too.
Chairman Oberheel.
I don't know if that answered your question, but maybe some of these next slides will.
Chairman Oberheel, just to elaborate a little more.
So we did come down for a site visit, and I'm pretty familiar with Ruidoso from having been there many times, but
Nope, I'm
we took
around.
pictures. And so the sorts of things that we were looking at, you can see in these photographs. So there's some buildings that are not in great shape. Some of them just have kind of peeling paint and need some sprucing up. Some of them are close to empty or totally empty. A few are boarded up. I know that some of them have had some interest since we started this project and have been acquired and are being fixed up, but we left those in anyway because at the time we did our site visit, they were indicative of the kinds of problems we were concerned with. And then we also looked at deteriorated site conditions and sidewalks. I'm going to go back, let me see. I'm going to go back up just a second. You notice the lodge building there with the broken up concrete, that's an example, or the deteriorated landscaping, that's an example of site deterioration, although that whole building is boarded up. There were quite a few places where the sidewalks are not in good condition. And actually, when we had meetings with property owners, we heard a lot about the sidewalks. And this is, if they're on Sudderth, this is one of the things that we have, we're getting, seeking comments from the DOT for. And then there's a picture of the steps on Center Street, and you can see they're broken up. So the idea is that this is an area where, in sort of sequence, the effort would be to try to fix this and make these areas more walkable. These are just some examples of businesses that have closed and the buildings are empty right now, and they're scattered all through the street, up and down the street. And here's one of the maps that I was talking to you about. So this is the west end of the corridor. So you can see in the yellow, those are the properties where the sidewalk in front of them is not in good shape. The orange is sites where maybe there was cracked asphalt or weeds or, some deteriorated condition on the site. The red is deteriorated buildings. There aren't as many of those. And the purple is kind of vacant buildings or vacant properties that could be either potentially developed or occupied or redeveloped. So you see, I would not have thought this just looking at how kind of solid the Midtown Retail District is. But we did hear from property owners and from Midtown that, yeah, this is right. There's stuff up and down the corridor. This is the East End, and a lot of the issues there are some deteriorated buildings and sites, but there's a lot of lacking sidewalks. So one of the ideas we had was this property here in the triangle area on the East End could be a nice little developed area, but there are no sidewalks in there right now. We also looked at properties that were for sale or for rent. There was only a little bit for rent, but a lot for sale. And one of the things we noticed when we were identifying these and putting this map together, we noticed that in our photographs, the same signs were in front of the same buildings as were in the Google Street View we were using to help us locate things. And that was supposedly from 2018. So that indicated to us that some of this property is moving kind of slowly, and maybe with some effort and promotion, these properties could be developed or put to, if they're already buildings, could be put to better use. Same thing at the East End, scattered properties for sale.
Phil, obviously you're talking about my part of the world here. Just if you don't
Yes.
know. Okay, so when you're talking about the sidewalks down here in this, or when you're talking about the area potentially for development, are you, I don't know, can you point at what specifically you're looking at down here in this area that you mentioned might be nice if there was some better infrastructure?
Oh, I don't know if we had any pictures of here. Do you want me to go to Street View real quick and I can show you?
Well, you could, and maybe you and I can just meet offline. I hate to drag everybody into that.
Yeah, I mean, if you look in this area, there aren't any sidewalks.
Right, just the one that's right around the hospital, I think, is about it. So.
Right. And there are some buildings that are vacant, are not being used right now. There's some vacant properties in here. And it just seemed like a good opportunity to encourage use of the properties or development of the vacant property.
Okay.
We had a town hall meeting, Chairman, and Judge Bryant had brought up Mescalero Trail and looking at some of those older commercial buildings and revitalizing that area and potentially even adding some housing for a mixed use area.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and you asked how the boundary was formed. Originally, it was just properties fronting Sutter. But then when we had the meetings with the steering committee and then with the broader group of property owners, our boundary expanded.
Okay.
And this East End, that's how the East End got to be this sort of node down here.
Okay. Great.
And I know one of the things that, well, maybe I won't say this because I'll give you ideas. People sometimes don't like to be talked about as blighted, but it's just the way the act is written. And really what we're talking about is things that could be better. And there's a way for the village to help make that happen.
I know as a resident, as you drive through your community, and even when you're a visitor, sometimes you don't necessarily notice areas until you give it a really close look. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's, not the way a property owner might want it. It's just that maybe when you look at it, it could be something different that's more appealing.
I think that's sort of the way it is with my bathrooms right now, but I have to say, these maps, this is not how I think of Ruidoso when I drive through. I had never paid attention to that. And when the staff was saying, yeah, we want to look at this redevelopment idea, and there's some, and I thought, what are you talking about? But now I know what they were talking about, and it's not so obvious. Especially because Ruidoso has this sort of interesting character like we're looking at right now, and you just think of, to some degree, it's just kind of an interesting place. And you don't see the rest, I guess, or I didn't. So this is the vision for Midtown District to advance the streetscape and create community spaces within the Main Street District. I think we're talking about doing this along the entire corridor. So we had some particular focus areas that came out of the discussions with the property owners and the business owners. Some had to do with access and mobility, so that's a sidewalk improvements that we're talking about. It's some making parking more accessible, providing the wayfinding so that the people know where they're going and can get around more easily. And this is another area where we're looking to the DOT for comments. Character and design, that would have to do with improving facades and just maintaining the character of that area. Economic vitality, some support for small business development, and then placemaking and community spaces. So for access and mobility, we had sidewalk repairs and maintenance on Sutter and Center Street. And some of the property owners had the idea that Center Street's a good north-south connector all the way from like Wingfield Park and the parking up in that area, all the way across Sutter down to the river. So we're looking at that as being a good north-south connector. And then wayfinding, these signs are obviously not signs that they're just illustrations, so that you would have directional signage, you would have signage to tell you kind of where you are and have a directory, and then some banners to let you know you're in the Sutterth corridor. For placemaking, there's some proposed improvements to Wingfield Park. We included those in here. There's a mural program in Midtown that's already in process, and so advancing that's really a Midtown Association project, but we thought it should be included in here. The Wingfield House History Center, the Village owns that property, and it kind of provides a public anchor on the west end of the corridor. And then the sidewalk improvement, or the streetscape improvements on Sutter. And that's another one that would be coordinated with the DOT. There's some maintenance funds already allocated for sidewalk repairs. So the streetscape is kind of another level that would happen probably in conjunction with other street improvements. For character and design, we talked about a facade improvement program. People were pretty interested in that and having something similar with signs. So potential for some free assistance occasionally that comes out of Main Street's budget, not always, but you can watch for it and have it in the plan and ready. A sign improvement program, either one of those could have some low interest loans for people, and then trying to fix up these vacant sites and buildings and get them into productive use. And this is an area where, especially for the vacant sites, thinking about housing and where housing would be appropriate along this corridor. Samantha mentioned earlier that you have some limitations in the zoning code. And so one of the proposals, and this really had to do with the economic vitality piece, because it was brought up multiple times by the business owners, that if the ordinance allowed housing to be built in the corridor by right as a permitted use, then you could get a good mix like some other resort communities have, where you have housing right in there with the businesses. And it would be potentially workforce housing. The businesses were interested because it would put people close to them in walking distance. So the economic vitality pieces included the business incubator at the Horton complex, updating the ordinance to allow residential development, and then the sewing machine is an example of small scale manufacturing that we think would also be appropriate along the corridor, especially when combined with a storefront. So things that we see are breweries that have maybe a brew pub associated with them, and they're small scale and local production, jewelry occasionally, crafts, food items. So it's not large scale manufacturing, it's sort of craft manufacturing and small scale that someone could do behind their shop. But you want to make sure it's allowed. Albuquerque's done a couple of different modifications to its zoning ordinance recently, especially for the breweries and wineries, but also to include some other small scale craft type manufacturing. Other ideas related to outdoor recreation that's a big push in the area is maybe bicycle assembly or something like that. Do you have any questions about this? Because I think the ordinance update is really going to make it more possible to provide housing along this corridor where the multifamily people might be more accepting of it. No questions?
Is that the end of your presentation, Phil? Oh, okay.
Yes, that's the end.
Could you, just for the
So-
purpose of this board, would you touch on the MRA and the tools that it'll provide us with maybe
For
additional?
housing?
Yes.
Yeah, so you already have the affordable housing ordinance and plan for workforce that meets certain income criteria. One of the thing that's interesting about the MRA is you can help encourage market rate housing as well. And that's probably the biggest difference because you're not restricted. It's more about redevelopment than it is about any particular price range. Is that what you meant, Samantha?
Mm-hmm, definitely. And even on our affordable housing projects that we've pitched in the past with trying to achieve the points, if they're within that
that's
boundary,
right.
they'd
That's
also.
right. The MRA designation and the plan and having the residential development in the plan is something that earns you points when you're trying to get approved for the tax credits for a tax credit project.
One area that was looked at last year, but it just was too short of a time frame, was the Nob Hill Lodge. Maybe a redevelopment of that and add units, but that's kind of still early.
Yeah.
But it is within our boundary, so maybe we could look at that area.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there were some vacant parcels that were good locations for housing, and there were also some buildings that are not currently used that might be good sites for housing. And the fact that you can combine it with your affordable housing plan and act to get workforce housing, and also have the option to do, you know, a range of income levels in here. I think it just kind of broadens the possibilities for the village to get the housing accomplished the way you want it to.
Okay, that looks actually really good and exciting. So, and if I remember right, the MRA designation is effectively on the grant or the tax credit area. It earns the same amount of points as the Main Street did. Isn't that correct?
I think that may be right. You know, they change the points every year. And I have not looked at I looked at 2021, but for something else. So I didn't look at that, but, yeah, it's something similar. And you know how competitive those projects can be, so that anything that helps your case is good. And our next steps are P and Z next week. And then March 9th, the village council. So we're waiting. We were hoping to get some review from the state this week, as early as this week. But we'll definitely have their comments incorporated before the March 9th hearing. You know, all of these reviews and comments are happening simultaneously.
So who is the final body to approve this designation?
The village council.
So if the village approves it, but isn't it a state government or a federal government that, nope, the village just designates it as
The
such?
village designates it. Now it's being reviewed to make sure this is not, that the area actually meets the criteria.
Okay,
But the review is at the level of the village.
And the
Okay.
state statute and all the steps that you have to take for adoption, it's all laid out, and so we have to follow it to the T. We have to notify our public newspaper and mail property owners, so there's been a lot of public engagement to this point. What I'm hoping from you all today is a recommendation to the governing body for adoption.
okay.
Do we have a quorum?
Yes.
Okay.
So with that, is there any questions or comments from the committee on the plan that was presented? If you'll also notice on the notice of the meeting, you received actually the more detailed plan on the besides the presentation. So, and it goes into quite a bit of detail on the different different information. So, does anybody have anything you want to bring up?
I just want to say I like it. I think it's an awesome plan because and what I do like is that whole corridor, because there are so many properties, just like the property just west of Meacham, on Sudworth. And I mean, like you say though, all the way through that whole corridor, there's a lot of different properties with different issues, but they're properties that we've been looking at for years and years and years that could make a tremendous difference. And they're not being utilized because they need help. And so this is a way that I see that we could help make it where there's stuff that can really be used for the betterment of the community. I like it. I think it was a great presentation, Phyllis. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Does anybody else have any comments? No? Let me say the same thing, echoing what Becky did. And what I love about this is, and I think we all know this, the one limitation with when we were kind of stuck with looking at the Main Street only areas is, most of that area is fairly well developed. I mean, there are definitely some spots in the Main Street designation that could use some work. But I think we all know it's much more this entire plan that's been presented today that encompasses more of the area that needs attention, at least in my opinion. So I appreciate you putting this together, and I think you did a terrific job of covering what I see in the community. So.
Well, thank you. And we did have a few comments of could we expand the area even more, but we just pretty much limited it to the Sudworth corridor for now. And if this is successful, it's a tool that you can use in other areas that need attention.
Okay, great.
It's a great start. It's a great start. That's a big corridor, quite frankly, and there is a lot of stuff on in that corridor that can be much more usable for our community.
Yeah, I think so.
As one who marches in the parades and stuff, I can tell you that's a long enough march, and this is twice as long as that.
Oh. Hey, Todd, the parade used to be all the way down to Walgreens.
Oh my goodness, I think I would die. So
Right, so you wouldn't want to march in it then.
I would like to. I'd entertain a motion from the committee to recommend approval of this.
we're small on the committee, so I'll go ahead and make that recommendation.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Cecile. I have a motion and a second. All in favor of approving the
Aye.
plan as submitted?
Aye.
Any opposition? Seeing none, then Samantha, you have your recommendation from our group.
Thank you all. I appreciate it.
Thank you all, and it was nice to see you and nice to have a run through and get some questions, and that was great.
Again, I'm actually very excited about this because it really does touch a lot of areas. It touches my area down here, which I can say needs some work as well. And so I think it'll be terrific. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Very exciting.
Next time on the agenda is the discussion and adoption of the resolution for Open Meetings Act requirements and the meeting dates for 2021. I don't think we received the dates, Samantha, in our packet, or at least I didn't see it if we did. Do
Okay.
you have a date?
So the next meeting date would be April the 22nd, and then the following quarter would be the fourth Thursday as well. So that would put us July 22nd.
July 22nd too? Okay. Okay.
And then,
We'll be set up for the fourth Thursday each month, is that correct? I mean, each
yes, I'm sorry for not including those dates. And then October 28th.
quarter? Okay. All right. Do I have any discussion around the meeting dates or the adoption of the Open Meetings Act requirements?
No, I like those dates, so they work for me.
Seeing no
I'm fine.
discussion, can I have a motion for adoption of them?
I'll
I
make a motion for the
that we
adoption.
adopt it.
Okay, I have a motion and I'll take that as a second as well. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposition?
No.
Seeing none, then we will accept that as to be approved. Samantha, do you have a community development report for us?
Yeah, so this Metropolitan Redevelopment Plan, as you can tell, is on the forefront for approval. We've been hosting town hall meetings to get all of the input from the community added in. Once that's adopted, we'll be able to use it to improve some village-owned properties as well. She had touched on the Horton Complex. We want to bring in new startup businesses that are more towards outdoor recreation, and we would be able to offer space to them at less than market rate, so that's a huge advantage for a new business. Other than that, we have our Chapter 54 land use ordinance that's going to be starting a rewrite. We've recommended to the village council a contractor to rewrite that, and hopefully we can add in more multifamily housing, just make our zoning code more flexible to bring in more living quarters for families. Right now, it's a huge struggle I'm seeing just even in my department. I've got one that is living in a camper, and I have one that his home he's been renting for 5 or 6 years recently sold, and now he can't find a place to live. And it's stressful. And so this is a huge problem that we need to address head on. And I'm hoping with the zoning rewrite, it'll allow more flexibility to provide more homes for families. We're also in talks of maybe working with the Downs or the county to try and bring in more land so we can put this multifamily housing on as well. So we just have some different ideas that we're working with now. We just finished strategic planning last night for 2021, and one of the main goals for my department is utilizing a tool we recently purchased that it's mobile analytics. What it is it tracks credit card purchases and cell phone pings and puts it into useful information to provide services that are being leaked out of the community as well as retail. So we're going to roll out an implementation process for this, but we're going to be meeting with businesses and service providers in the community on a one-on-one basis to show them what the analytics are showing where we're seeing leakage. So that'll be a huge step to revitalize the community and help after this pandemic. I also wanted to introduce you all to Jacqueline Abeta. She's the new administrative assistant in my department. She started just right before Christmas. And
Welcome, Jacqueline.
Hi, Jacqueline.
so that's all I've got for our community development at this point. I'll
Okay.
stand for any questions y'all may have.
That sounds like a lot considering what COVID's done. It seems like you've done a lot of work behind the scenes, so that's good.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Now, are there
Thank
any
you.
comments from the other board members? All right, seeing none, then we will be adjourned. And thank you all. And again, I think the MRA is exciting. I think it's the right direction for us to go. So thank you.
I love it. Yeah, thank you guys for your work on the back end there. Diligence, persistence, all that good stuff.
Great. Thank you all.
All
Have a
right.
great day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a good one.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Did we have any YouTube viewers? Wow. Oh.